Okay, here we go, picking up the KJF with the twist battle. We wrapped up in UK 8 last time, and the videos weren't working, and I had to backed up. And later on, I found out I actually had US 9 and Russia 10 video as well, but or excuse me, US 8 and Russia 9 video as well. But starting in UK 9, I decided to start doing um, screenshots and then making some notes on the screenshots because I'm going to try a little different format. I'm going to do kind of a slideshow going through here, and I'm just going to have it pause on each slide for a little bit of time, not super long, so that it can just kind of go through. You can always pause the video so you can see the numbers if you'd like. But that will make the video go kind of a little bit quicker. Certain spots though, I am going to stop and I'm going to talk and note the special events, if you will. Otherwise, I did kind of sometimes mark it in the pin. So with all that said and done, like I said, game gets a little sloppy. I started switching over this because I found out it is hard to talk and think at the same time. So in any case, here we go, and see what you think of this format. Like I said, the first few are going to be, the pictures aren't the greatest because it's of the video, but then when we get to the actual screenshots from the game, it turns out pretty nice. So, can move that off to the side. So here we are. I'm going to be labeling up here. We're in the US 8 non-combat mode. So first off, real quick summary. Japan bought 2 bombers. They bombed the Philippines, where I had 1 infantry and 1 bomber, and they lost their 2 bombers that they did have there. Now, this is a big part I want to talk about. He did move his whole exiled navy back here to 63, and if you remember, I was getting these transports away from here. So I really wanted to make sure we kept these transports empty. So there's lots of options, but I did my calculations. I had enough navy here that I'd be able to come into C zone 60 and still have air coverage for my transports back in 36. So by coming to 60, he couldn't grab and go, anywhere, because I'd be able to hit him in any of those spots that he could grab and go. He couldn't stop in 62 or 61. He couldn't even come down here to 59. So I really was pushing him off the board and making sure these transports stay empty. So that was the US 8 non-combat. Otherwise, like I said, we're pulling back over this way. So this whole move allowed us to stack India for a little bit and then come back and still keep Japan pushed off the mainland. So this is the mobilization. The point I wanted to make here, there's actually 5 destroyers there. I know you can't see it, and I built 3 more to go in here. Knowing Germany is air heavy, and knowing that I need to start getting some pressure on to Germany on this side so they can't just be sending everything to the southeast, I needed air coverage. If you do an IPC for IPC challenge and look at defense against air, if you take destroyers versus battleships, that you can take 5 destroyers, 40 IPC versus 2 battleships, and the destroyers are going to do better against the air. Similarly, been building from scratch. If I just build carriers and fighters, the first one that comes out equal is 4 loaded carriers with 8 fighters versus 17 or 15, excuse me, 15. No, 17. That was right. 17 destroyers. Any case, you do the crunching, and at the end of the day, all destroyer build is better IPC for IPC in the air defense than building carriers and fighters or battleships. So that's why I'm building destroyers over here. I did end up moving all 3 tanks in here. I left the infantry to block the German tanks just to create a little bit more harassment. We know their days are limited. Did not take the far east here, I want to leave that in Japan's hands. If I had taken it with Russia, then when Germany takes it, Germany would start getting that income. So I'd rather Japan get that income. Start of UK 9. My big point here is he moved his air force all down here. There's no air in Europe anymore. He has also bought 11 tanks and 1 infantry, so he's buying a lot of tanks. Uh, and so I was just kind of spotting where all his tanks and all his fighters and bombers are here. Again, we did, at least the Russians did keep Germany occupied up north for a while to help us try and get this solidified, as now everything's coming down this way. UK non-combat. As I made that mention, no air up here means I don't need to worry about the sea lion. So I was able to move my fighters down and start their continued circumnavigation of the globe here, or of Europe, Asia, Africa. The big thing is I forgot to move my subs for the UK into this stack. So, ouch. It gave him numbers. Without those 3 subs in there, it went from being like a 55% defense to a 60-65% offense. So he took it. He has 2 battleships survive. He bought 2 fighters, so he also had 2 fighters survive it. So this was a big oopsie for getting my subs going up there. U.S. combat. Again, no air up here, so we're just taking some spots up there. Running transports free. Coming back in to finish clearing up Africa. Russia, at this point, all we really got as our fighters. All I did was fly the fighters back as we're coming in here. So this was an interesting point. So he still did have these 4 tanks and these 9 airplanes. And although I was stacking here as I was abandoning India, I had to really work to get this stacked. And so I actually bought 2 AA guns, which I know there's certain people out there that are screaming at me, and a fighter. Or actually, I bought the 2 AA guns and then brought the fighter in, but bought the 2 AA guns in here for my purchase. I bought a fighter and put it over there, flew the other one in. So, any case, I really was loading everything I could to put a defense here, and that is where brought in. So this is the Thailand battle. This is the defense with my 2 AAs going in there and my fighters. So in actuality, he had odds to win, but it was going to be costly. It's going to cost him more than it was going to cost me in that battle. So I was putting that in there, hoping that that would be a deterrent from him going for it. Okay, going to pick up the speed a little bit here. UK 10 start. Most important thing is to note that he did go back to heavy land being built here. Going into combat, I did use a stack attack so that it freed up my fighters to come help clear up the battleships along with my rest of my UK Navy, because we did not need an issue coming up with that. In doing so, I had done the calcing, and that would leave me a dead zone here, Burma. Nothing special here other than pulling all my units in. I did forget to move my fighters, which is going to become important here in a little bit. because they're going to be one turn behind now. This is what the end looked like, just highlighting the fact that I did finally get a transport placed down here for the UK, up in the Atlantic. The rest went down there. So big thing that happened on Japan's turn, they bought 2 fighters, keeping an eye on their counts here, so they're up to 6 fighters now. And they did move their transports over here to C-Zone 65. US combat, not a whole lot, just cleaning up in the Africa area. Again, planning for the fact that there's 4 tanks probably coming to Africa based on this. And based on that, like I said, even the 7 tanks could come this way, or they could head back to India for this big massive showdown in the southeast. So I've got 2 infantry I'm coming down here, transporting down. I got these guys I'm moving in. I've got these guys I'm setting up. I also brought this fighter over here in case they decided to do a double, 2-space move with them. That would still leave me a little bit of a return attack if he did it with 1 tank. And if he did more, we got more coming. So the start of UK 11, the important part of the Germany turn. Again, they bought another 13 infantry, 2 bombers. So they were building up on land, but they did put most of them back here in Germany as they realized I'm starting to harass them back over here. What that means is there's a low supply line here. He's only got 3 units coming in still to this battle to the southeast, where I've got my 13 units I'm building a turn. So if I can hold, that's a good sign in a couple turns. Also, because I did stack here, he had to pull his Germans back a space to not lose them. UK combat, made the comment I'm finally getting up into the Nordics here with that transport I built. Chose just to trade down here in Burma and try to kill this, get a cheap shot kill on the 1 German infantry with a fighter and infantry. Fortunately, the UK 11 non-combat screen didn't come out, so it was an error on the saving. But you can see I moved my sub here. His response to that was that he split his transports up. He did buy 1 more fighter, so we got now 7 fighters sitting here, so we're keeping an eye on that count. US 11 combat, again, not a whole lot. He did move his German tanks, by the way, down into Egypt here. We're moving over. We're just getting prepared. Did build a cruiser and an AC for the Thailand sea zone. This is important because I already knew he was going to be coming in to stack Burma. And this is where I knew it was going to get tricky because now fighters sitting on Japan can go 1, 2, 3 land where he's got that stack of Germans. So they now can hit the sea zone 36 come their very next turn, even though it doesn't look like it now. So I had to pre-plan on that so I didn't get my whole build-up down here wasted. And this is why I've been building 1 fighter a turn for a while with the US, is to be able to drop 1 in here. So despite the fact over here in the Atlantic we talk about all destroyer builds, I've been slowly building over here because these fighters, they're going to be good for the sea zone, but they're also going to be good for defending on land, which I'm going to need, as well as some of the attacks. So that's the difference of why my Navy build is different down here. So again, just kind of illustrating some of the setups that I had to do. 1, I was trying to really preserve Africa as much as possible, so he's got 4 tanks there. So I've got my fighters now sitting on my carriers here, which can go 1, 2, 3, hit Egypt, and then 4 land. So I will have my 2 infantry, my artillery, and my fighters here to help protect this one. Meanwhile, marching one at a time, held one guy back, since it would be pointless to send both of them in there to get killed. And then the other note is he did move his bombers over here to France, so my next transport to come out with my next reinforcements for Africa had to go to Brazil, not straight over here. And then next turn they'd be able to come down to help that reinforcement. So this is the big thing that was kind of going through my mind at the time is I'm looking, I got most of my allied forces up here in Yemen, and I'm thinking, I can probably overpower these guys. What if I just sent my whole mass up north, since I know he's coming into Burma next turn? And so this was a big consideration, and versus coming back down and trying to hold Thailand. I mean, if I was doing that, I was conceding Thailand, and so I was going to have to find a way to either just sit here using these troops to pick off uh, his Germans, and then some of them were going to chase me. Excuse me. So that was one of my considerations, one of the big deciding points here in the game. So start of UK 12, big point here. Germany went back to a heavy air purchase because he's looking at putting as much pressure as he could down here. So again, highlighting here, he's got his 11 bombers and 6 fighters. All of them can hit Thailand, as well as they can hit the Sea Zone 36, including these fighters and including these bombers up here. The bombers out here also create a little bit of havoc on the Atlantic side. So good placements. He's going for a hard press here, so it's now time to make a decision. Unfortunately, after the fact, I had just looked at the numbers and I didn't actually calculate it, and I said there's no way I could stack Burma. When I looked at it at this point in the game, well, could I have? And it turns out if I had put everything back into Burma, I could have stacked and not let him come into there that turn. It probably would only bought me a turn, but you can see how tight this is getting, because we now have the Japan air, which can hit Sea Zone 36, all this German air that can hit Sea Zone 36, as well as hit Thailand, and so we got to defend both. So nothing too exciting for UK combat. I did buy 4 destroyers because unfortunately I simply could not defend both Thailand and Sea Zone 36, so I'm going to have to pull the Navy back for a turn here. So I needed to go ahead and get some boats in the water down here for protection. And this is what it looks like at the end of UK 12. I put a question mark. Some people may have said, why did I bring my sub back here instead of go ahead and killing that transport for free up in Sea Zone 63? The concern was how he plays this transport. If I went up, then he could have come down to Sea Zone 43, grabbed this guy off the Solomons and gone to New Zealand and then Australia, and just created an income headache down on this side of the world. And sure, I've got lots of boats and whatnot's going over here, but I really needed everything committed to 36 in Thailand at this point. I couldn't afford sending a destroyer out even. Every boat and every plane needed to be accounted for. So by coming here, this prevented him from being able to come in, or else I would have been able to snipe out that transport. This transport, sure enough, he could grab off the Japan mainland and start dropping units again, which is unfortunate, but they're way up here compared to the battle down here, and it's not gaining any income up there. So that was my decision there. Going into US 12 combat, the non-combat screen for UK 12 did not load right, so anyways, I did make down here with UK non-combat. The main thing we did is we did decide to come down back into Thailand and bundle up into Thailand. We had to move our boats back because, like I said, we do not have enough to defend both. We did have our 3 fighters over here that, again, because they weren't here where they could have landed in Thailand, they're in, I think it's Rhodesia, they had to fly over here to the carriers. And so one turn out of sync, they could have been in this defense that is going to be a big critical defense. I will say at this point, on J12, I was very glad that they did not kamikaze their 7 fighters and bomber either into these guys right here, where he could have taken out a couple AA guns, which is really important for all that air he's come with Germany, or just units, or even on the fleet itself. He could have commied there and maybe taken out some of my fighters, which were also going to be important for the defense coming up of Thailand. You know, the number, and then it would have also been tough to get the fleet back into, you know, even if he didn't attack Thailand, we'd be able to, it'd be very hard to get the fleet back in if he kamikaze them because of all these German bombers now. But thankfully he did not, so he preserved his Japan Air Force for this point. I did buy 3 fighters. You can't really see that on the screen there. Alright, moving along. So, non-combat key points. We did retreat the U.S. Navy back here to protect the transports, to grab the guys off the Philippines too, and brought them over, setting up the defense because he's breaking into Africa here. So we've got our 5 units here, 2 units here. So one of these is a tank in here to defend where we need. And we did take that France for the money. So this is the war report. I couldn't honestly remember if this was the end or the start of round 12. But as you can see, power-wise, the Axis definitely have an advantage here. Our income-wise is almost even, so keeping Africa is critical. The positive side that doesn't show up on this in a KJF is this discrepancy in power. I don't think it's not good, but it's not horrible either, because what the Axis does not have is any power on the seas, and if they start buying more and more air, that's more expensive, and so the Allies, as they build up the infantry and ground troops, will start catching that up. So, in any case, that's where the war report stands. Russia 13, just moving the fighters back in. Key part here is what the odds for the Battle of Thailand is. And this is what I had to think through the US 12 buy. Do I buy 2 fighters for Thailand, 2 AA, 2 infantry, 1 infantry, and 1 fighter? And so what I was looking at, obviously, not great results for me winning. The attacker is probably going to win regardless, but of note, there's 18 air involved in that. So that's not winning with ground surviving. That's winning with a couple plane, a handful of planes surviving. Of course, he's going to want to have 1 ground, 1 tank survive to take the territory. So, but again, kind of like the battle I showed before for Thailand that he backed off of, that the total IPC loss is in my favor in all of these scenarios. So when I looked at this, my final decision is I'm pretty sure this 1 fighter brought me up to 6 fighters in that area, which would be what I need next for the next carrier potential build. Also, I needed some of that money going to the Atlantic. So ultimately, I decided on the 1 fighter, 1 infantry, which still gives me a 20 IPC gain. Still likely to lose this battle, and you can see all the different calculations there. So he did take the battle, and it went not just favorably for me, but very favorably for me, as you can read and hear what all they lost. So Thailand held on. They didn't even lose, and he had to retreat with one bomber and one tank, with 6 fighters still sitting there. UK combat still just trying to be annoying up in the north. Take Burma down here. Get reset up. Combat. Only German air left now is this one bomber, so that was important to note. Now we got a little more freedom up here. The sub here is still doing the dance with the transport. You know, he moved him down here. Again, if I came up here and pressure the transport up here, the next turn he could come into Solomon's. I can't get back down to him. I needed to stay in range of being able to get to him. And then if he got there without me being able to get to him, then again, he's got free reign to be annoying down here. So Japan bought 2 fighters again, so just keeping an eye on our number of fighters here. What's going on combat-wise for US this turn. So non-combat, again, just setting everything up here in this Atlantic battle. I did note that the German bomber here can reach there, so I did bring a couple destroyers there. But meanwhile, I brought the rest of my destroyers, brought some transports in here so that we could come in and potentially with the destroyers and bombard along the North Africa coast here. Brought my guys up here to solidify the southern half of Africa and setting that up. And then did buy a bomber. Wanted to start to try and help out the Atlantic and Africa because they got a lot of infantry, so start to help that annoyance over on this side of Germany's. So after that big battle, huge swing obviously in the attack power. Again, the income staying pretty much even. And this was the start of 14. I did notate that correctly. This whole 2 fighters just doing their defense thing. Okay, so after Germany went one, they bought 10 tanks. So to me, that's signing that they're getting a little bit desperate to try and get down into these areas fast, which is good because I'm buying just a whole bunch of infantry down here again. So 13 infantry artillery with their 12 infantry artillery and 1 fighter coming in here versus his 10 tanks and 2 artilleries, and I'm still going to be picking at his edges over here. Of note, only 1 bomber in Berlin with my UK transport right there. Dun dun dun. So, had the one in there. The transport got lost and hit Northwest Europe instead. Obviously, that was a mistake, a blunder by my opponent, followed by a blunder of me not even noticing it, you know, because Northwest Europe is so much more important. In the UK, again, we're just building up back in here as Germany's consolidating and reorganizing, and we're setting ourselves up. So again, just tracking along. Japan did buy a 1 fighter. He did get some, like talk about the transport could land and grab a couple of troops up here. So he's got his Japan air still sitting here. So keeping our counts because again, he's still got Burma. So that means the C-Zone 36 still in threat by these fighters as well as these. So I got 11 air still hitting there, plus the one German bomber. So this is actually after combat phases of being a non-combat. I took my 4 infantry and had a clean kill of the Japan tank. My attack on his Egypt tank unfortunately was not going great, so now I'm looking at a uh-oh possibility. This was the nice thing of having the 7 US fighters sitting in here. I was able to wipe out his 8 Japan land troops with 4 infantry and 7 fighters. So, 4 infantry on it, but took out 8 of his Japan and still have room to defend from German coming. So again, non-combat here. You can see I buy another bomber, some ground units. Again, here I am planning. I sent the bomber down here to Morocco. Again, bringing 2 more land troops in case these German tanks break through. I gotta start containing them again. So again, Russians still sitting here. Another mistake. I forgot to move my men in non-combat, so now I got 2 transports that's going to sit there for a turn. So Germany needed to take their turn, but after the German turn, we talked. We were both making mistakes. I blunder and Berlin. I'm goofing up the transports. Again, league season had started, ranked season had started. We were both getting distracted and realizing that the power's very neutral. This is kind of a stalemate stabilized, and this game is getting ready to head into a long game. I never showed a long, but he did bomb out the UK factory a while ago. That's why I haven't been producing a lot up in the north there. When I got that one transport off, that was a nice thing. Of note, he did attack those 2 tanks, and they ended up splitting and dying. Everybody died there. And I did put that one bomber here to be able to fly up and take care of that transport up there while this sub's dancing with this transport. So we're getting set up. I feel pretty comfortable here. It's going to take a while, but again, his supply lines had thinned out there for a while, and now he's got tanks coming where I'm putting 12 infantry and artillery with the single fighter as well regularly. Felt comfortable there. This is what the other side of the board looked like. Again, the Africa battle continues on as 4 more German tanks coming in. I've got my transports, my bomber, my destroyers to help cover. You know, where do we go from here? It's got to keep going on there. So it's the end of the battle. We decided to call it a draw here, so to speak. I feel pretty comfortable with where Ally situation is at this point. I feel like I got an anchor in Southeast Asia. I don't think he's going to be able to get me. I've got a good defense going on for Africa. And I just don't see him getting the Navy to get that last victory city he needs. But as you can see, lots of mistakes happening. There's anything could have happened. So, but this was setting up for a much longer battle that we just weren't ready to continue in. I think the 3 videos, the first video shows a great setup of the first few rounds and the UK Navy fleet being dropped and how that was able to get the money islands quick. The second video went into the fall of Moscow and the early setups of heading into the late game. And a third video continuing showed a great job of how to be predicting the need to fight for Africa, as well as setting up that Southeast Asia anchor and ways to try to divert Germany so that everything can't get dumped to Southeast Asia while you're trying to get that set up. So I hope y'all enjoyed the battle at all. Again, obviously, I say we call it a draw, but the reality is, way back when he would have won when I forgot my infantry in West Russia. So, uh, credits. This really was a should have been a loss for me. Uh, Thanks to my partner for forgiving me and letting it pretend that that infantry was still there. So, I think all in all, it's a good video. A lot to learn as far as Africa setup and preparing. I don't think the UK flip is a good idea. Didn't really before, but I thought maybe we had enough of an advantage there. And I hope you enjoyed the whole battle and look forward to the future ones.